Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Let me repeat that. After we have taught you how to recite this Quran, only then will we teach you the explanation of the Quran. And so we have a powerful message which has been sent here. And that is that Allah in His wisdom wants us to first recite the Quran before we study the Quran. Which means, and you might agree with me, that it is Allah who teaches. The knowledge comes from Him. It doesn't come from Washington. Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran. Allah teaches the Quran. Okay? Allah teaches the Quran. So if Allah is the one who is teaching the Quran, and it comes to us, inspiration, ideas and so on, if we do not recite the Quran the way Allah recited it, we can't study the Quran. If you do not recite the Quran the way Allah recited it, you cannot really study the Quran. Does anyone want to differ with me? I'm giving you enough time if you want. Now then, what is that way that Allah was reciting the Quran? Every night of Ramadan. We now know that this is what we have to do, every night of Ramadan. But the best time, the Quran tells us, the best time to recite the Quran is at the time of Fajr. Either before Salatul Fajr or after Salatul Fajr. This is the best time because Inna Qur'an al-Fajr kana mashhooda. The recitation of the Quran at the time of Fajr is witnessed by the angels. And so we have concluded, I hope you will agree with me, and this is a very powerful statement, that you cannot succeed, truly succeed, in studying the Quran unless and until you are reciting the Quran the way that Allah recited it to Nabi Muhammad ﷺ. Maybe we can now understand why the world of Islam is in the pathetic state in which it is today. Yes? We are the laughing stock of mankind. We are laughing, the world is laughing at us. The Quran tells us it explains all things. It is tibyanan likulli shay. And if the Quran explains all things, would it not explain to us what is money? Would it not explain to us what is money? What is that explanation in the Quran? And how do we explain this predicament that around the world of Islam today you could hardly find a scholar capable of even recognizing that the money that we are now using was created by our enemies. And it was meant to be used to rip us off, to steal our wealth, to impoverish us, and eventually to enslave us. And therefore this money is haram. Could you find any mufti anywhere on the face of the earth? Huh? Who declares that the money we are now using is haram? Maybe the reason for this is because they lack the capacity to study the Quran properly. The other reason could be they don't have the courage to do it. All right? But I wouldn't want to use that because our brothers are sincere. So then, if you are not reciting the Quran the way Allah recited it, you cannot really study the Quran. Your study of the Quran will be only superficial. You will not be able to penetrate the Quran so that the Quran can throw light on the world today. All right? So, what is the way that Allah recited the Quran to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu. I wrote my book, The Quran and the Moon, 2 years ago or more. It's there. How many people reading it? How many people studying it? So I have to teach and teach and teach and teach and teach. I don't know how many times I have to keep on teaching. How did Allah recite the Quran to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam? Good. Well, first answer is, he divided the Quran into 30 parts. Yes, and one part every night. And the word for a part is called, in Arabic? Juz. Juz. And the plural of juz? Ajza. And what's the Iranian word for juz? For the Farsi language? Because India and Pakistan, they adopt this Iranian language. What is it? Sipara. Sipara. The Arabs don't know this word. Sipara is from Farsi. So he recited one juz every night of Ramadan, every night, and completed the whole Quran in the month of Ramadan. And this is the first meaning of Shahru Ramadan, alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. That the whole Quran came down in the month of Ramadan, juz by juz, until it was completed by the end of Ramadan. This might be the first time in your life you're hearing this. Okay? Praise be to Allah who gives knowledge. So we make the dua, Rabbi zidni ilma. O Allah, kindly increase for us our knowledge, particularly of this subject. Now then, to answer the question, how did Allah recite the Quran? One juz at a time. How much is one juz? How did he choose? Did he divide the Quran? A scholar from Britain of Pakistani origin, I won't mention his name, I don't want to embarrass him, came to Trinidad and he wanted to visit me. And I met with him and I asked him. And he might listen to this video. I'm not mentioning this in order to berate him. I'm just explaining to you what happened. I asked him, the Quran is divided into surahs. Yes, we know that. How many? 114 surahs. Who divided them? So, his answer to me was, I think it happened in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq or Umar Farooq. That was his answer to me. That we divided the Quran. We did it. What do you say? Do you agree with him? What do you say? Who divided the Quran?
Allah.
Huh?
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Where's the proof?
Because it was in Lawh al-Mahfuz, so at that time it was that time.
What do you say? Who divided the Quran into surahs? Yeah?
سيدنا عثمان بن عفان وعمر بن
Who?
عثمان سيدنا
Who divided the Quran into surahs?
عمر بن
My audience in London, you didn't have dinner tonight, did you? You all had dinner? Yeah? Yes, Allah did it, but where's the proof? Where is the proof that it was Allah who divided the Quran into surahs? Where is the proof? Because he said, it happened in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq or Umar Farooq. That's what he said to me. And you were saying no. You were saying it is Allah who divided. So I'm asking you, where is the proof? Yeah?
I think when the revelation was sent down in certain places, and it naturally divided it.
I want you to give me the proof from the Quran.
Mecca and Medina.
Suratul Isra. Remember we started with Suratul Baqarah. We went to Suratul Taha. We went to Suratul Qiyamah. And now we go to Suratul Isra. And Allah says, Qur'ānāan, Faraqnāhu. I have divided this Quran. I have divided this Quran. Qur'ānāan, Faraqnāhu. And I have divided this Quran for a particular reason. What is it? Litaqra'ahu. I have divided this Quran into surahs for the purpose of recitation. The Quran is not divided into surahs for the purpose of study. It's only in Washington that you study the Quran from Surah Al-Fatiha to Surah Al-Baqarah to Surah that's Washington and Tel Aviv. But the Quran is not studied that way. How to study the Quran? Go to my book at the back, Methodology for Study of the Quran, and read that book. Okay? So Allah is saying, I have separated, I have divided this Quran into surahs. And I have done so for the purpose of recitation, not study. Qur'ānāan Faraqnāhu Litaqra'ahu An-Nāsi ala Mukthin. that it might be recited to people at intervals, meaning the whole Quran from cover to cover. You can recite it over a period of 1 month, which is the Sunnah, particularly in the month of Ramadan, because Allah did it. He recited the whole Quran in 1 month. Now then, do you mind if I ask you a question? If you have ever recited the whole Quran from cover to cover, put your hands up. All right. There are some of you who have never done it so far, okay? You must remember that the Quran must be recited from cover to cover. And the Sunnah is to recite it over a period of 1 lunar month. But when you are young and you're strong, you could do more. So someone might want to recite the whole Quran twice in a month. And I met a Sudanese in the north of Scotland, young man, and he said to me, Sheikh, I recite the whole Quran once a week. Once a week, okay? MashaAllah. MashaAllah. So this is what Allah is saying, ala Mukthin, meaning at differing intervals. At differing intervals. If you want to recite the whole Quran in 1 week, then Nabi Muhammad ﷺ has given the ajza, that on the first day, this is how much you have to recite. On the second day, this is how much you have to recite. I have never done it. I'm much too old now to be able to complete the whole Quran in 1 week. Okay? But the Prophet ﷺ prohibited reciting it any faster than that. He said, if you recite the Quran any faster than that, you will not be able to absorb its meaning. And so now we know from Surah Al-Isra that Allah divided the Quran in surahs for the purpose of recitation. Let me repeat it one more time. So when I question you now, you have no excuse. You can't say I didn't know. Allah is the one who separated the Quran into surahs. Okay? And He said, I have separated this Quran into surahs for the purpose of recitation. Qur'ānāan Faraqnāhu Litaqra'ahu An-Nāsi Mukthin. That you might recite this Quran to people at differing intervals of time, periods of time. Good. And we know that there's a key for opening the Quran. It's called Al-Fatiha, that which opens. And this is a surah with 7 verses. Sab'an min al-mathani. Often recited. Often recited. So you don't need any hadith to support you when you say, every time you pick up the Quran, to recite the Quran, you must always commence with Surah Al-Fatiha. Okay? Those who don't want to accept this, let them go their way. This is our way. Every time you pick up the Quran to recite the Quran, you always commence with Surah Al-Fatiha. If you're reciting the Quran and somebody comes and interrupts you and you have to answer him, Then when that conversation is over and you return to the Quran, you again recite. Again recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Okay, so every Juz will commence with Surah Al-Fatiha. So now, we see the moment of Ramadan. And Ramadan has commenced, and we now want to begin the recitation of the Quran. So on the first morning, after the Salatul Fajr, we had our Sahri, we had our Salatul Fajr, and now we want to recite our first Juz. What's the first Juz? What's the first Juz? Which is the surah of the Quran after Surah Al-Fatiha? Answer? Surah Al-Baqarah. What do we know about the length of Surah Al-Baqarah? It is the longest surah in the whole Quran. 286 verses. So why has Allah put the longest surah of all at the beginning? Why? I mean, there are many people, you know, who will eat their biryani, go home and sleep. But the rest of us want to be able to think. So why has Allah put the longest surah of all at the very beginning? Why? And all the long surahs of the Quran are all at the beginning. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Ali Imran, Surah Al-Nisa, Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah Al-An'am, Surah Al-A'raf. All the long surahs are at the beginning. And guess what's at the end of the Quran? Have you noticed? Short surahs at the end. Why? Is this connected with knowledge? That long surahs at the beginning and short surahs at the end, does this have any connection with knowledge? No. Yes?
It's because we follow the moon cycle for recitation of the Quran. The short surahs, the long surahs are in the beginning because that's when the moon is young. And
someone come sit here next to me because I can't hear her. Come sit down. Come bring a chair here.
It's because we follow the moon cycle.
I didn't bring my hearing aid.
It's because we follow the moon.
She said because it's connected with the moon. Because
the long surahs are in the beginning because you follow the moon cycle, and that's when the moon is young.
Okay. And what are you saying?
Because we have more energy in the beginning of Ramadan, so it's easier for us to read the longer surahs first, and as Ramadan goes by, our energy sort of falls down.
That's right. Allah wants us to begin with the new moon, because it is Shahru Ramadan. So when you sit down here, wait, you're not going anywhere. So when the moon is seen, the new moon, like a baby, you begin the recitation of the Quran. So when you are young, you are strong. So he gives you the long surahs when the month is young. And when the month is old and you're feeling tired, what does he do? He gives you short surahs. Short surahs. Make it easy. Make it easy. In other words, he wants us to recite the Quran with the moon. In Urdu you say, Chand ke saath jeena hai. Is that correct? Chand ke saath jeena hai. He wants you to live with the moon every month. So when the moon is young, he gives us the long surah because you're strong. And when the moon is old and you're tired, he gives you the short surahs. So now then, what is the first juz? Which is the first juz? The moon is seen. And we start. Somebody help me?
Surah Al-Baqarah.
The whole of Surah Al-Baqarah. Of course, you have to start with Surah Al-Fatiha. But the first juz is the whole of Surah Al-Baqarah. Is there anyone who differs with me? Nobody differs with him. Come on. Let me hear you. Is there anyone who differs? Huh? That the first juz, when you see the moon, is Surah Al-Fatiha followed by the whole of Surah Al-Baqarah. Well, this is wonderful news. Guess why? Because every single copy of the Quran that you pick up today, illa masha'Allah, you see at the top. The first juz ends at verse 141 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Have you ever checked it out? Go check it out. Allah divided the Quran. Yes. Allah says, I divided the Quran. But somebody went and did a new division of the Quran. Somebody went and did a new division of the Quran. And this is sinful. Oh yes, this is sinful. To say that the first juz will end at verse 141 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And this is what the whole world of Islam is following. Yes? The whole world of Islam is following this. And nobody is objecting to it. And then, if Surah Al-Baqarah is the first juz, the whole of it, then on the second day of Ramadan, we recite Surah Ali Imran, the whole surah. Okay? Anybody differs? Well, guess what the world of Islam is doing? Just pick up any copy of the Quran that you have in Arabic and you'll see what they say, and nobody is challenging them. Nobody is challenging them. Now the second juz for the second day is from verse 141 to 252 of Al-Baqarah. Yes. That's what all the Muslims have accepted that. And you and I say no. The second juz as ordained by Allah because He separated the Quran for recitation. So on the second day, the second juz is Al-Fatiha and the whole of Surah Ali Imran. What is the price we pay? If we depart from the division that Allah has given and we make our own division. What is the price we pay? Allah has given us a division of the Quran in surahs. And we say, no, we will make our own division. On the first day, the first juz, we end at verse 141 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And the second day, we end at verse 252 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And the third day, we end at verse 91 of Surah Ali Imran, etc. what is the price we'll pay? I will quote to you only one more passage of the Quran and we'll stop. And you have to read my book, the Quran and the Moon, to get the whole system. This is Surah Al-Hijr of the Quran. And Allah says, وَقُلْ إِنِّي أَنَا النَّذِيرُ الْمُبِينُ. Tell them, O Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, tell them that I am a warner. I've been sent to warn you. And when I warn, I do so in a manner which is plain and clear. What is the warning? The next verse tells us, كَمَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَى الْمُقْتَسِمِينَ. The warning is sent down to the Muqtasimin. Who are the Muqtasimin? Who Allah is telling, tell them, warn them, O Muhammad, warn them, alayhi salatu wasalam. Who are the Muqtasimin? الَّذِينَ جَعَلُوا الْقُرْآنَ عِدِّينَ. They are those who break up the Quran, bite it, cut it up into pieces. For Rabbika, I take an oath by your Rabb, O Muhammad. For Rabbika lanas'alannahum ajma'in. I'm going to question every single one of them. عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, for what they have done. Meaning, for what they have done to this Quran. Surah Al-Hijr. So what is he talking about? Biting the Quran, cutting it up, chopping it up. Answer, whatever other things you have to talk about, this is one of them. You're breaking up the Quran and separating it in a manner different from what Allah has given for the purpose of recitation. So I want you to read the book and follow the method of recitation that Allah has given. This is the first day, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth, this is the fifth, this is the sixth. When we come to the seventh day, however, there is something startling on the seventh day, but we don't have the time to do that today. And then you have 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and so on. But in that book, the Quran and the Moon, you find the complete ajza to recite the whole Quran in blessed Ramadan. The Quran, of course, also tells us that Ramadan is a month of fasting. And we are told that we must fast because others before us were also commanded to fast. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. You're not the first to be ordered to fast. Those who came before you were also ordered to fast. When did this come down? يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ. Fasting is now made obligatory on you. When did this come down, this command? It didn't come down while you were in Mecca. For 13 years we were in Mecca. No fast of Ramadan. Okay? Even though the revelation of the Quran is already coming out. When we arrive in Medina, the Quran refers to Medina as Yathrib. We fasted with the Jews on the days when they fasted. And in accordance with the law of fasting in the Torah, that law of fasting was you begin fast at sunset and you fast all through the night and all through the next day. Significant moment in the history of religion. when it became plain and clear that the rabbis in Medina had rejected Nabi Muhammad and had rejected the Quran and were now conspiring to try to kill him. And then Allah Ta'ala decided, it was the month of Shaban, the month before Ramadan, and he did a number of things. The first one, he changed the Qibla. So they have their Qibla, and that Qibla is still valid for them. But he gives us our Qibla now. So we are a new Ummah is born. Before this, we and the Jews belonged to one Ummah. But now we are a new Ummah, a separate Ummah. So the first thing is a change in Qibla. And the second thing is he gives us a new law of fasting. And the new law of fasting is we will fast from dawn until sunset. Now let me give you the Arabic text. Allah says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. Eat and drink, meaning during the nights of fasting. Hatta, until when? Until you hear the siren, eh? Until you hear the siren? Is that what he says in the Quran? Or until the paper tells you, or you check on the internet, and the internet will tell you when to start the fast. What does Allah say in the Quran? Huh? He says, eat and drink during the nights of fasting, that is, حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمْ الْخَيْطُ الْأَسْوَدُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَبْيَضِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Eat and drink until it becomes plain and clear and distinct to you, the difference between the white thread and the black thread of dawn. I don't know about you here in London, but in the rest of the world of Islam, nobody takes out a white thread and a black thread to check when to start fasting. You know what anybody do that? Huh? Allah says, eat and drink until the white thread of dawn is distinct from the black thread. And you have never come across anybody taking a white thread and a black thread? Strange, eh? Isn't it? But one of the companions had problems with the white thread and the black thread. And he came to the Prophet ﷺ to say, I'm having problems with this. It was at that moment that the Prophet ﷺ explained that this is not an ayah muhkama. This is an ayah mutashabiha. An ayah muhkama is that part of the Quran which is plain and clear, no need for any interpretation. But an ayah mutashabiha cannot be understood unless it is interpreted. Explanation is tafsir, but interpretation is ta'weel. So the Prophet said, when Allah spoke of the white thread and the black thread, what he meant by that was, eat and drink until the light of the day is distinct from the darkness of the night. I was in Islamabad, And my hotel room had a balcony, and from the balcony I could look east. And Salat is taking place, you could hear it on the microphone for Fajr. And I can't see any light in the sky. I can't see any light in the sky at all. So I am entitled to be eating, and they're already praying Fajr. I am entitled to eat and drink until the light of the day is clear and distinct from the darkness of the night. And only then the fasting begins. And only after the fasting begins can you have the Salatul Fajr. This is a problem when people cannot study the Quran the way it ought to be studied. So Allah gave us a new law of fasting from dawn until sunset over an entire period of 1 month. We are the only people in the history of religion, we are the only people to be given this fast of Ramadan. And we should thank Allah for what He's given us. And there are other things that we have to do in Ramadan. I will mention only one more. And that is that in the nights of Ramadan, we have a prayer called the Salatul Tarawih. But in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was not performed in a large jama'ah. You either recited it by yourself, alone, or in small groups. Small groups. And that's how it continued in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq as well, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And it is only in the time of Umar, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that he instituted the Salatul Tarawih bil Jama'ah. Now then, it is simple to understand that if you have to have an imam to recite the Quran in Salatul Tarawih, you should find someone with a beautiful voice. Allah has given me a voice for lecturing, but I don't have the voice for reciting the Quran beautifully. No, I don't have that voice. And whoever is reciting the Quran should recite the Quran beautifully. And when you are listening to the Quran in Salatul Tarawih, you should be able to understand what is being recited. If you cannot understand what is being recited and you remain like that year after year, you are disrespecting the Quran. And if you disrespect the Book of Allah, you're disrespecting Allah. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? So you have to learn enough Arabic to be able to understand what is being recited. And when you understand what is being recited, and he's reciting in a beautiful voice, then the nights of Ramadan in Salatul Tarawih is meant for crying. When the Salatul Tarawih is taking place and the Quran is being recited, people will be crying, the tears will be falling. When last did you see that in Tarawih? Have you ever seen somebody crying in Salatul Tarawih? No? Today, Salatul Tarawih has become mechanical. That's right. And somebody decided, very foolishly so, that we must recite the whole of the Quran in Salatul Tarawih over Ramadan. No, that's foolish. You must recite the whole Quran yourself in Ramadan. Your tongue must move. It's not he who must recite the whole Quran in Salatul Tarawih. And because you have to recite the whole Quran, and it's going to take hours and hours in Salatul Tarawih, guess what happens? Answer? You recite the Quran at 95 miles an hour. Yes. 95 miles an hour. And all the, excuse my language, all the sheep and the cattle and the goats and the camels who have no capacity to think, accept it. But you and I will not disgrace ourselves in such a way to ever join in any salat in which the Quran is being recited at such speed. It's a disgraceful thing. And so Salatul Tarawih is meant to cry. So if you have to attend Salatul Tarawih, find someone who can recite the Quran beautifully. And even if you are just a few people, don't join them. Don't join them at mechanical prayer. You stay by yourself and a few people, and you have someone who is reciting beautifully. And if you can understand what is being recited, you will cry in Blessed Ramadan. I want to stop here because I've given you the essence of the Quran and Blessed Ramadan, and we pray that Allah Ta'ala might bless us in this Ramadan, that we might recite the whole Quran from cover to cover. Ameen. Any questions?
Allah fahab li taubata wa